What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in. I want to talk about what I'm building for next season. Right behind me is my S15. This car has been great. I've driven it for 7 seasons. It has led me to multiple podiums, multiple wins, 2 third place overall finishes in the Formula Drift USA Championship. I really can't complain about it. But technology has gotten so much better over the years. I really am eager to build a new car that implements the newest technology. And there's a lot of things that I've learned over the years, and the sport has developed a lot. So there's only so much cutting and welding and modifying I could do to this thing. I think it's really time to just start fresh and build the car, using all the knowledge and experience that I've gained over the last 7 seasons. I started out my drifting career in an S13. That was my first drift car ever purchased. And that thing was great. It was so much fun. The next logical step was to build an S14 for my pro Formula Drift, rookie year. And I built that. It was awesome. Totaled in 2012. Built this car right after, and I've been campaigning this for 7 seasons. So the next logical step for me when selecting a new chassis was build an S15. I had the 13, the 14. Now, why not build an S15? The S15 is also a great logical choice because I could transfer literally all the data that I've gathered from many, many years of campaigning an S14 right into the S15. They're basically identical chassis. The S15 looks a lot more modern. It's a little bit smaller on the exterior dimensions, but the front and rear subframe is pretty much identical. A lot of the suspension is interchangeable. So the dynamics of the vehicle should be very similar. It shares a lot of the same parts. And I'm very excited to build another fresh S chassis and continue where I left off with my S14. So this is the S15 that I've been working on. I honestly started this during the 2019 season. I knew it's going to be a ton of work, so we went from a running, driving car that had air conditioning to being completely stripped down to basically the bare shell. Took all the subframes out, suspension out, obviously interior, and cut the back half of the car, cut the front half of the car. And I'm finally getting around to sharing this stuff on video, and a lot of the fab work has been started, and we're honestly down to the fun stuff. And we got the spare motor from last season in here, so we can mock up everything around it. We have a spare transmission in there. The differential is in there. All the stuff's in there, but it's just there for mock-up. It's all going to have to come out. None of it's actually connected to anything. None of the wiring's in the car. None of the plumbing is in the car. So this is what you have to do to build a race car. You got to put the stuff that drives the car and build everything around it. Actually, the very first step that was taken when building this car was putting my seat in there, putting me in a comfortable position, then building the roll cage around it to make sure that I'm safe and that it's ergonomic and comfortable for me to drive and feel 100% confident behind the wheel. This S15 is going to run a very similar engine as my S14 does. It's basically 427 cubic inch custom built motor. We have it mocked up in here. The cool part about this is that the motor is sitting a lot further back in this chassis versus my S14, and that was a huge effort to push as much of the weight to the back of the vehicle as possible. S chassis are kind of prone to being front heavy. The motor doesn't sit very far back into the firewall, and we tried very hard to push it as far back as we could. There's rules that we have to follow. We can't chop out the firewall, so we have to get creative and push it back as far as we can, and we're going to have to get creative with plumbing and just make it work where it's at. That allowed us to push the intercooler a little bit further back. The supercharger, this Vortec unit makes a lot of boost and a lot of power. It weighs quite a bit, like any supercharger, so getting all that weight as far back is very important. The intercooler piping here is just a temporary mock-up. It's not going to be all silicone. Right now we're just using this HPS silicone coupler in order to kind of mock up what we're going to have to build out of aluminum. And other than that, the front end is pretty much set where it's going to be. We got to mount up some more tabs for oil cooler, oil filter, power steering filter, power steering cooler, things like that. And the front end will pretty much be done after that. Obviously, we have to mount up a bash bar in the front, but we already made the provisions for that. This is a removable plate right here. The bash bar will mount to it. And we already got the V2 Y-Step kit mocked up, some Feel 441 coilovers on there, so that way we know where the wheels are going to be, how far they're going to cycle lock to lock and steering angle, which is crucial when you're building items like this. You don't want to build this too low where under full suspension compression your wheel might be hitting it, or at full lock it might be interfering. It's very important before you fab anything that surrounds the suspension to ensure that you have the suspension in place. Take the spring off, cycle it at full bump, at full angle, and make sure everything's clear. Let me show you some of the interior on the car. And this is what I'm very excited about, because not only do I have an actual racing pedal set in there, it's not a brake booster with the factory pedals like on my S14. I'm very much looking forward to more consistent braking and left foot braking, and the brake bias that is built into that. It's all adjustable. I'm very much looking forward to having that control and adjustability that I didn't have in my S14. And honestly, the whole car just feels very ergonomic because we built it around my seating position. So the steering column, which is a woodwork column, is adjustable, and it's already set to from the get-go right where I feel like it's super comfortable. The pedal box is positioned in an area that I feel is very conducive to me being comfortable. I have the luxury to put everything exactly where I want it to go. You know, versus my S14, we kind of built off of all the OEM positions and just made it work, and it worked fine. But this is a next level of fine-tuning the ergonomics inside of a car. So we have a OBP pedal set, which I thought was the best out there on the market, and I really like this piece because the master cylinders mount right underneath this little floor plate, which gives me a ton of room. I don't have to worry about the master cylinders poking out the back and hitting the firewall. And an S chassis, there's not much space back there, so having them under here is ideal. And what we did for the reservoirs is mounted them right behind the seat. That's an easy spot to fill them, to keep an eye on the fluid level, but also that allows us to move the weight further back and get that better weight distribution. For the handbrake, I went with an OBP fun stick, and this is a reversible mount, meaning that the master cylinder is actually in the front. A lot of the handbrakes, the master cylinder is behind, and we just don't have that much space back here. I don't want it rubbing or leaning into the seat. Here's the brake bias controller, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, allows me to dial in the front to rear brake bias. I mounted it in a spot that's very easy to access from the driver's seat, so I can adjust it on the fly, and just very much looking forward to driving this thing for the first time and feeling comfortable behind the wheel. Back here we have the fuel cell, which is mounted in a very similar spot as my S14. This year I chose to go with the Radium FCST. It's got fuel pumps that are built inside of a surge tank. It's all internal. You don't have to mount any external surge tanks or extra plumbing, and I really like that. It's really clean, very simple, and it is supposed to ensure that you have no fuel starvation at all. We go through a lot of fuel. We sit in grid for a long time. It would really be a bummer to lean this thing out if the surge tank doesn't work well. So I'm putting my trust in this Radium piece that it's going to keep my motor supplied with a lot of fuel pressure at all times and never starve. Coolant system, CNR radiator, that thing's mocked up where it's pretty much going to go. The quick change differential is in here. It's where it's going to be, and we built everything kind of around that. This is a spot for 2 batteries. We're going to mount the bash bars to this back whole area that we built, and everything's going to be crashable up until you get to the structure. We don't want to damage this structure or the unibody itself, so everything's going to bolt on here. If we get in a wreck, we'll be able to replace it, get it off, and get new parts back on. There's actually quite a bit of crush room. The body extends out pretty far out here, so that's always an effort when you're building a drift car. Make sure that you have a lot of crush room and the stuff that's in between, the crucial components, and the bodywork is replaceable. Another angle of the fuel cell and the firewall that separates the fuel cell from the interior of the car. There's going to be a window that comes around here. It will be hollowed out to get access to the fuel cell in case we need to change anything or service anything, and obviously there's got to be an inlet for the air to go into the radiator. So that sums up where we are with the S15 build. A lot of stuff happening at this stage of the build. A lot of parts are coming in and we're mounting them up, fabbing all the mounts and brackets, and I think it's a very exciting time, and I'm glad I'm starting this video series to show you the progress on this car. We are in absolute slam mode to get this thing going as fast as possible, and I can't wait to share the rest of the build with you. Please comment below and let me know what it is that you want to see in detail about this build, and I'll do my best to show you guys throughout this video.